Now, let's talk about a dimensional shift. So a different dimension is not the same as a timeline shift. And now that we are elevating and Earth is actually splitting more, what you're going to start to see is the actual shift. Some people will be able to shift into a completely different dimension, and you'll be able to experience a completely new dimension, not just a timeline shift. They're not one and the same. And when you're able to shift into a completely different dimension, a lot of the things that you can experience are the things that we typically refer to as mythical. That's just mythology. No, it isn't. The majority of what you see in fantasy or mythology, it's imagination, because you function in a dimension where that stuff is mythical and fake and pretend. It isn't real. When you function on the dimension where that isn't real, then in that dimension, it's mythology. It's not actually real. Because in that created reality, those things aren't real. They're mythical. They're made up in that particular created reality. That is a certain dimension that you function in. When you can actually become elevated enough to shift dimensions and you can enter into a different dimension, all of a sudden in that dimension, the veil's thin because you're in a new dimension. And that is super exciting. Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiore, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode. Hello, beautiful souls, magnificent divine beings. Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast. I'm Rachel Fiore, your host for this episode. I would love to dive in to the December 1st, 2024 timeline split. And let's understand what this means. I want to go into a little bit. Everybody talks about timeline shifts. What happens when we jump timelines and things like that. I want to go into in this episode a little bit about the difference between a timeline shift and a dimensional shift, actually entering into a different dimension, because there is a difference between the two. Okay. And there's also everything that we experience in this time of this lifetime of the Great Awakening. There's what we experience when, as the earth, as most of you know, is splitting more and more and more. And people, through their free will choice, their vibrational frequency, they choose which earth, so to speak, that they're going to end up on. So early in this year, in 2024, January 2024, I shared my prediction for the year, what was going to happen through this year. And I've even given it an update at one point on what I see, how that has been playing out. And basically I talked about this is the year of choice for real. Meaning, as Earth splits more, you're really going to choose by how much work you do in yourself, how highly conscious you become, how much of your traumas and your unhealed crap that you elevate and alchemize and rise out of and no longer function at those frequencies. When you do the real work on yourself, you are making a choice. That choice that you are making is a choice in frequency, because we are nothing but energy. The energetic choices that you make, where you place your attention, literally, your attention, that's where your life force energy flows. You are consenting to what we could say are negative, third dimensional realities. When you focus your attention on them, you're literally choosing to be a part of those realities where you send your attention. Okay. This never means you ignore, you spiritually bypass, you pretend like certain things don't exist in the world. That's ignorance. That's powerlessness. It is weakness. Not divine beings don't do that. Divine beings are of all the universal ways of oneness, of all 20 of them. The way of wisdom is one of the ways of oneness. It's number 19 out of 20. You are not a wise being. You are not the vibrational frequency of the way of wisdom if you act like evil doesn't exist on the planet. Darkness doesn't exist. That serial killers, rapists don't exist on the planet. Like trafficking doesn't exist. Like when you pretend like these things don't exist because you're too weak and powerless to handle them emotionally, that's not what I'm talking about. Placing your attention and focusing all of your energy on these things is number one, what creates your own individual reality. And in that case, suffering and nothing but misery. It also is what anchors those realities and continues to bring them to fruition on the planet. Okay. You have to understand energy. You want to understand the highest level of quantum energetics. Enroll as a university student at Masters of Self University. I teach you all of this stuff in our classes and our coursework at MSU. So know that you can go enroll. Check out the website and go enroll if you want the highest level of teachings and you really want to learn this stuff. For the sake of a podcast, I try to water things down and make it as simple as possible in order to reach the broadest audience. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't follow this. So I really try hard to make this stuff as simplistic and practical and easy to follow as I possibly can. Okay, so having said that, I try to water things down a bit so it just reaches a broader audience. Okay. If you really are elevated, it's so easy to understand this stuff. Good for you. If you really want to learn more at the highest levels, become a student at our university. I mean, we teach this at the highest levels. Okay. So I want you to understand something where you place your attention and really focus your attention. That's where your life force energy goes. You are the creator incarnated as a human being, period, end. You are goddess incarnated as a human. Every being is. So you are a creator, the divine creator, the source creator of all that is. You have those powers. So where you focus your life force energy, you are consenting to that reality. You are creating that reality, co-creating that reality. You are reinforcing and stabilizing and holding that reality in place. You have to understand that. I've had other podcasts where I've mentioned this stuff, but I want to reiterate a little bit because it's always a good reminder. And just in case this is the first time you're ever listening to me, I want to give a little bit of that foundational teaching before I continue. So if you can understand all of that, then it's easy to understand where we're at right now. And I am referring to where we're at on a planetary level as of December 1st, the new moon of this, December 1st, and the earth splitting more. And this is such a critical time. This is what I want to talk about. There's also, we just had a Schumann resonance where there was like a 7-hour blackout. So you can go down the rabbit holes and look all this stuff up. And if you want to pause it from listening and go look this stuff up first, go ahead. I'm not going to go into detail about those things. I want to mention those things because they're really critical of what just happened. And what just happened, as many of you know already, the earth is splitting. And you're choosing, based on where you direct your life force energy, which earth you're going to end up on. Okay. So we just split more. That was a bigger split. That blackout, that was a bigger split. Old Earth versus New Earth. Now, our original timeline for the completion of this is like 2032. That's the original timeline for all of this. I am hoping that as more and more people awaken truly, authentically, just because you're spiritual does not mean you are an awakened being or awakening, not one and the same. I am really hoping that so many people are awakening and healing and elevating their levels of consciousness to high levels of consciousness, to really divinely powerful beings that you have every ability to become, because innately You're an eternal fractal of the source creator of all it is. You are that. So you have the potential to reach that level in human form. I'm really hoping that it speeds it up and we experience that full split way before 2032. But just understand that original timeline, this isn't over until 2032, meaning the Earth splitting completely. It is a process. Okay. So we just went whoop, farther apart and split farther apart. And I know a lot of you felt it over this weekend. And whenever this podcast is released, I don't know the date that it'll be released, but I'm recording this specifically referring to the weekend of December 21st. A lot of you, the blackout of the Schumann resonance, the new moon, and all of that. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Go back and look it up if you need to. Okay. So what just happened? The collective jump timelines. There's a collective timeline jump. And what does that mean? Well, the Earth split more. So what that means is what I'm seeing in December. I mentioned when I recorded the beginning of this year for 2024, what I saw, you have a choice. You're going to make your choice. You're going to anchor yourself in to something and solidify it more by the end of this year. And don't you know it? That's what just happened. That is literally what just happened. There was a collective timeline shift, literally meaning the Earth just split more. So now the bridge, so to speak, to energetic bridge to get back and forth, old Earth versus new Earth, it's this month of December 2024. That's solidifying and anchoring in place. So as of next month, you are more anchored on to the Earth that you're choosing, and your choice is based on your vibrational frequency, period, end. It's how energy works. It isn't personal. Okay. For anybody that wants to jump on here in your fucking ignorance, that's not oneness. Talk about Earth splitting. You're an ignorant fucking fool. You are obviously on the old Earth. You know nothing about quantum energetics. Just move the fuck on. Just move the fuck on. If you're not ready and you can't come over here to learn higher level of metaphysics and these teachings, that is okay. I'm not going to judge you. You're the one judging in your ignorance, and you're triggered and offended because you lack the wisdom to actually comprehend what I'm teaching. That's not a judgment of you. You're not inferior. You're in a fucking different grade. That's for sure. You don't have the slightest clue what oneness is if those are your stupid comments. Seriously, sorry, but I'm going to put the truth. I'm going to be the mirror of what you need to look at, because guess what? Your ass is landing on the old fucking Earth, and you're going to play victim and blame everybody else why your life is so fucking miserable, like people who are trapped in victim consciousness do all the time. Blame everyone and everything else on the planet, including a teacher who's here to help you elevate and understand all of this in order for you to get out of old Earth and make your ass your way up to the fucking new vibrational frequencies where you can live with heaven on earth. It's your choice to be that low. Part of you choosing to be that low, which you pretend like you don't choose it, and it's a lack of oneness to talk about the truth, brainwashed by patriarchy and third dimensional indoctrination of what you think is teaching, and it's not. It's just mind control. When you're trapped in that, that's your trigger. That's your reaction to being taught the teachings where if you understand them, you can easily get yourself out of those lower negative shitty vibrations. The fact that you're offended and triggered by somebody to give you the truth, which is your key, your magical key to get out of that shit, and then you're going to attack and say, that's not oneness. You don't fucking know what oneness is. Oneness is giving you the teachings, the truth, the wisdom, and the keys to get yourself out. Old patriarchal brainwashing is there's a savior coming for you. Tolerate rapists and narcissists and serial killers. Tolerate them. Hug them. Would you want to be in a room filled with rapists and serial killers? Spend the weekend. See what happens. Do you want to do that if you know what they are? Why not? Do you feel unsafe? You're not in oneness. You can't be this stupid, people. When there are people elevated enough to offer you the teachings that can set you free, and all you do is attack the very teachings, and then you wonder why you're on old Earth and suffering, and you want to blame a teacher that's given you the fucking keys and the wisdom and the teachings to get yourself out, and yet you won't get yourself out. You won't just take the key and unlock the door and walk through the fucking door. Instead, you bitch and you complain and you moan and you attack and you judge, all the while claiming that that's what someone else is doing. Those are old earth people. Guess what? Here's this bigger split. We can still see each other, but we're farther apart. So what you're going to witness is more extremes from the third dimensional old earth people. If you really are ignorant enough to misinterpret that as somehow saying they're inferior, that is your own fucking stupidity. That is your own inferiority talking. Knock it the fuck off and move on. You're not ready for teachings like this. That's like, oh, right there's judgment. No, it isn't. A second grader is not ready for college material. Why would you put a second grade in a college classroom? You wouldn't. You'd be stupid if you did that because they need to master second grade. That's what old earth is. And if you're offended by that, you're on old earth, and that's where you're choosing to be because that's what you need. You need to be in elementary school. That's okay. I'm not judging you for being where you are. Oh, isn't it funny you're judging me for where I am, though? Who's the one trapped on old earth? Do you see how this works energetically? So here's what just happened. Bigger split between the two. You're going to see more extremes, especially from the old earth people who are like arrogant and narcissistic and judgmental, fucking judgmental, nothing but judgmental. Understand energetically when you function at a much lower frequency than someone else who's much higher and teaching you something. When the two of you, when they're in your presence, and I know those of you evolving, this is going to hit home. Because those of you who are awakening for real, and you've been doing the real work, you're no longer trapped in the hamster wheel of your shit. You've elevated out of that. You're really feeling freer, lighter. You've done the work. You're healing your traumas, all of that. All that hard work you've been putting in for so long now, especially for some of you, for so long, you've been putting in really hard work. You've been elevating. What you've been observing is the higher you go, there are certain types of people, and it means whatever frequency they're on, their level of consciousness, who attack you more, who misinterpret you, who misconstrue everything that you say. And here's what's happening. And you're going to see more of this because of this split. I'm going to go into more of the split in a minute. Because somebody is down here at a much lower vibrational frequency. Now, let me say this. This doesn't happen as much when you're within 3 octaves vibrationally, the frequency within 3 octaves of another person. This doesn't happen so much. So there's 3 octaves above, 3 octaves below. Those are frequency octaves. 3 octaves above, 3 octaves below. You can still easily comprehend and understand for the most part. I'm simplifying. 3 octaves above and 3 octaves below. Anything more than that, when there's somebody that's 12 octaves higher in their frequency than you are, and this is a generalization, it gets way more complicated than this, but again, that's for class and study and coursework at the university. So you have to be a student to learn the more specific. Okay. I'm generalizing and I'm trying to make this as simple as possible for the general public who are not students. Okay. Just podcast listeners. Generally speaking, if somebody's 12 octaves higher than you are, and especially then, quote unquote, you are, if you're really low in your level of consciousness, there's a certain threshold of very low levels of consciousness. They cannot fucking hear what you're saying when you're like so high above them. High never means superior. Get your fucking ego out of it. It's never what this means. Don't misinterpret the teaching. But again, if you're a lower level of consciousness, you're going to misinterpret the teaching. That's what always happens energetically. Why? Because people who are way higher in their frequency, what you do when you hear them speak, you take what they say and you contort it. You literally change it to match your lower level of frequency so that you can comprehend what they're saying. The problem with that is you don't comprehend what they're saying. You twist it, completely misconstrue. You change what they say to match the frequency that you vibrate at. Because people do this every fucking day of their lives and they don't even realize this is what's happening. That's why communication with people is so challenging a lot of the time. How are you not hearing what I'm saying? Because you can't. You change what I say to hear what you want to hear, whether you realize that's what you want to hear or not. If you run aggression programs, separation programs, inferior, superior programs, then you will take what somebody says, you will change it around to fit your energetic programs, and then you will project an attack on that person saying that they said blah, 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 even though that's not what they fucking said at all. It's not what they offered you. It's not what they taught. None of that meaning exists. You'll make it up according to your programming. That's quote unquote what miscommunication is. When you function in energetics and you learn quantum energetics and you just function in energetics and you understand it, there's no miscommunication anymore, or barely. Because energetically, it doesn't matter how you say something. Oh, I feel the energy, that I understand. It's almost like having telepathy, but it's not the exact same as telepathy. But that's just a way to help you understand it. Got it? So you're going to see more of that. Earth just split more. December, I see the whimsical energies in December of people deciding what side they're on. Because here's what's going to solidify in the month of December. Depending on your frequencies, you are now on old Earth or new Earth. Remember, there's not a complete split yet. That's supposed to not happen fully until 2032. And like I said, I hope to God it happens a lot sooner, because the faster we awaken and the more of us that awaken, we can speed that process up. And I've seen it on a faster completion. I've seen that. Like, I see that speeding up. I saw it earlier this year that we can achieve this sooner. But again, it depends on all these variables that happen in the world when the evil and the darkness rises up and the patriarchy rises up to try to fight to stay alive. How are people going to react to the crazy shit that they throw at everybody? That could always slow everything back down, or everybody could respond in a very enlightened way and it could actually speed things up. We are the ones that determine it, people. We are the creators of all of this, co-creators. Okay. So what this means in this bigger split that just happened, this was the collective timeline shift. It was actually a split, bigger split. So the timeline shift is old Earth versus new Earth, but there's still a bridge between the two. You can still go to old Earth if you want to. Here's the kicker. And this is what I said early in the year when I did the podcast at the beginning of 2024. And right now, here it is. It's done. It's completed. I see it. So what just happened with this bigger split is the bridge between the two worlds, so to speak. You can still see people on old Earth and see people on new Earth. So you're going to see the more extremes of that, because you're going to see that polarization, because the old Earth does not function in oneness. They create polarization. They create duality consciousness. That's what patriarch is. Inferior, superior, yin, yang, everything's opposite to be balanced, which creates no balance at all. It creates nothing but opposition. And then you're always fighting and struggling for balance, by the way. That's for another podcast. It's not actual oneness. It's not actual equilibrium. The energetic frequency of the way of equality, the higher levels of the way of equality, because there's 12 levels to each and every way. The higher levels, you understand that just means equilibrium, energetic balance within myself first. Not just we're equal. There's no such thing as inequality in truth and divine truth between women, men, people of different skin color, and all that crap is nonsense. That's just level 1 of the way of equality. When you get higher up to the way of equality, the higher levels, Those are higher frequencies. That means equilibrium. It means stability in your own self, in your own being. Equilibrium in your own being, you versus your soul versus earth, because you're here on earth. Okay? So that equilibrium, that stability, that balance that you become energetically, when you are that balanced, that is an aspect of oneness. No more duality and polarized opposites and opposing forces and all that crap. That's old earth. That's patriarchy. That is not oneness. That is not what the new earth is. It is not what sacred feminine energy is. It is not what the matriarch is. All of that is oneness. And the old way of doing things is patriarch and domination and inequality and linear everything, hierarchy, everything. Feel the difference in the energy for those of you who can. Ugh, I say the words and talk about the old earth, and it's like, ugh, it's so negative and low and gross. You feel the expansiveness, the openness of what new earth energies are. So here's what happens. Now that this bigger split just happened, we just shifted the collective timeline. What that timeline shift was collectively was that bigger split, old earth, new earth. And the old earth people, they continue to create what they create, meaning duality, hate, separation, attack you, I hate you, you're stupid, right? Hierarchy bullshit. All of that crap. Judgment, 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 right? New earth people creating the new earth, the oneness, the world of oneness. Those aspects, those vibrational frequencies, it's a lot harder for you to just simply fall back into old patterns and jump onto old earth. That's what this latest split just did. When you are on, if you do, you can still cross the bridge and go over there. But here's what happens if you do. This is what this latest split, this shift that just got completed. This is what this means. This timeline shift collectively. If you're on old earth, or if you mess up and you cross the bridge back to old earth vibrationally, you get sucked in to old earth vibrationally. You start fighting and blah, blah, blah on social media and listening to the bullshit that's going to come out in 2025, what the patriarch's going to do to try to throw you and trick you and lure you back into old earth and those lower shitty fucking frequencies. If you fall for it, it is consenting to, and it is literally your free will choice. If you go back there to those lower negative frequencies, you don't want to get out of your shit and elevate higher. You get triggered and all the crap, all the things. When you're over there on old earth, guess what? It's not so easy to jump back over. You can't just walk. You can't just cross the bridge and come over. That's what this latest timeline shift, the collective timeline shift, this splitting more of the earth, that is literally what just happened. There was a bigger separation. That old earth, duality, opposition, hate, attack, fuck you, you're stupid, blah. All the nonsense. We all know what that means. A new earth is one of oneness. Guys, no different than being on just two completely different planets. Like your experience on planet Saturn. If you were just to fly to planet Saturn today and go move there and live on planet Saturn, wouldn't it be a very different experience? That's not separation. What are you talking? That's not oneness. What the fuck are you talking about? Go vacation on Saturn versus Earth. It would be different. Two different planets. Earth is splitting for a reason. The new Earth are the people who are willing to create and live as vibrations of oneness, period, end. They are evolving. They're willing to become. And if you're not willing to become that, there's no judgment. That's your choice. You have whatever kind of life you want, for crying out loud. But you ain't going to be on a new earth with that shit. It's just that simple. I don't know why this is so hard for certain people to understand. More evolved people, it's easier to understand this. You're like, oh, because I'm creating my reality, I'm choosing to become a being of oneness consciousness. Great. I'm choosing to elevate. Great. So I'm literally choosing to just, it's like going on vacation and going to vacation to a different planet, go to Saturn. My silly little example. You're choosing to move. And right now it's just vacationing on New Earth because you can still go back. Unfortunately, some people will. And I'll get to that in a second too. I'll talk about that in 1 second. But right now it's kind of like vacationing and trying out a new spot, trying out a new Earth, what that's going to feel like, look like, be like. You're surrounded now by more of the higher vibrational beings that are on a new Earth, creating a new Earth, living as a new Earth. You're now supported more. You're finding more of them. Your communities are building. That's what we're going to see more of in the future. Those communities really building of higher vibrational frequency of truth, no longer being so fucking triggered and offended by truth. Trust me, you're on an old Earth if that's the case. That's just the truth. Again, if you're triggered and offended by that and you somehow feel like that's an attack, you're the one functioning at such a low level of consciousness. You're defensive. You feel attacked all the time. You have a lot of fucking wounds to heal. And here's the kicker. You're no longer going to be supported by New Earth people. What does that mean? No, it isn't a big middle finger, fuck you. You've been supported your entire life to date by the people who do the real work on themselves, who elevate, the true teachers of this planet. You've been supported. You have had access to elevated beings your entire life to date. You have. No matter how lonely your journey has been, you have had access to, especially since technology has been skyrocketing, the internet was born, social media, etc., etc. You have had access to elevated beings. You have had access to the real teachers, the real coaches to guide you, the real healers to guide you and help you on your path of awakening, of healing, of evolution, etc., etc. You have had access to them this whole time. And there are people who really still to this day refuse to do the real, oh, why, it costs money to heal? Are you that fucking, what the fuck? Brainwashed by old Earth. Yep, that's where you belong and that's where you're going to stay. I hate to fucking break it to you. Oh my God, money? I have to invest money in myself? How much money do you invest in fucking Starbucks coffee? Why would you think, how much money do you invest on all the shit you do every day of your life? Add it up. What do you spend your money on? And you don't think the people who can take you to New Earth for real and teach you the fucking wisdom of the cosmos, they don't deserve to live a life of freedom just like you deserve it? You don't think we should reallocate where our money goes instead of mindless, brainwashing, mind control entertainment that patriarchy created for everybody? That's what helps to keep you enslaved, by the way, and at lower frequencies. That's not how it functions on a New Earth. People are willing to invest in themselves and they realize that they are the priority on this planet, not in an arrogant, egoic way. That my evolution and me learning from real teachers to take me to a level where I can actually activate my superhuman powers, because I understand as a more elevated being who's healing and awakening for real, that if and when I do that, as I do that more and more, and that's what I invest my time in, that's what I invest my resources in, myself and the people who can truly take me there, that means the whole planet rises in elevation because I am. That's oneness. Do you understand? When I, whoever I am, choose to do that for myself, that is the way of selfless service among all the ways. That is the way of selfless service. That helps the planet to rise. And it makes it easier for those doing the real work, who have always done the real work, have been doing the real work on themselves, going into their darkness, healing their stupid ego, healing and transforming and alchemizing their old traumas and their old programs and their old patterns of separation and duality and all the nonsensical brainwashing patriarchal bullshit. Those who have been so focused on themselves and those who are doing it now understand that the more you choose to do that, the more you help everyone else achieve it. It makes it easier for everyone. That's the support that you have vibrationally at a level of frequency, right? The more of us that do that and elevate higher and higher and higher, it makes it easier. Energetically, you are supported. Period end, you are supported. And it helps guide you on your path. Now, what happened with this split, those of you not doing that on old Earth, think about who and what you're now surrounded by. You don't have easy access anymore to all the elevated people who have always been there to help you, to support you, to invest in, because that means you're investing in yourself. You want to save your money up to go on vacation. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. But if you'd rather spend thousands and thousands of dollars on vacation instead of investing in your elevation of consciousness to activate your superhuman powers and help the entire planet in the meantime, what the fuck are you investing in? Selfishness, brainwashed bullshit to give your money away to superficial, surface level, fleeting things versus investing in yourself that could create the level of abundance that you've yet to experience that can only come when you're so elevated. Like, you can't even comprehend what you're missing out on. But this split that just happened, those on the old Earth, one year they're surrounded by nothing but those lower frequencies, because guess what? The split means all the people doing that work, all the people elevating, they're being pulled. We've separated more. Now, all those older people, they don't have the same access. You're farther away from each other. You don't have the same level of support, which means it's harder. Think about when you are surrounded by nothing but negativity, how hard it is to get out of it. What you didn't realize in your life so far is no matter how hard it was, no matter how isolated you feel, you always had access to people who could help you 100% of the time. They were always there somehow, somewhere. Whether you missed it or not, we were all blended together in one pot of soup, right? This split just shifted more. We are separated more. And in this divine separation, old Earth people, you don't have just easy access anymore. You have to cross the bridge. Cross the bridge means in order to go to New Earth, it is now 5 times fucking harder to get over there. Because you're surrounded only by your choosing, your consent to those lower negative frequencies. And it makes it that much harder to get out of it, to rise above. You have to work 5 times harder now. It doesn't mean you can't still come over, because there's still time, but it has gotten that much harder because there is a bigger split. That's what I want you to understand. Okay? For those of you New Earth people, it's easier. You're going to feel freer, more elevated, lighter, more positive. Okay? And when the shit hits the fan, because we still see all the old stuff, we're still not completely split. You're not going to experience it in the same way. It doesn't mean that you cannot choose to go back to old Earth by your triggers and your reactions to things. At any moment, you can choose to fall back and go. It's your choice. You always have free will choice. But here's the difference. You go back there, it is 5 times fucking harder to come back to New Earth from here forward. And it is only going to get harder the more we split apart. To the point where you're never crossing over ever again. And we'll get to that point at some point. We're not there yet. Okay. That was the big collective timeline shift. Now, let's talk about a dimensional shift. On a new Earth, you'll still co-create, and experience all different timelines and different realities, because you're a divine creator being and you create the realities that you want to experience, whether you realize you're doing it or not. Now, the more elevated you become, you're very consciously creating those realities and you're understanding on an energetic level precisely how you're doing it. Again, go to masterselfuniversity.com. We teach these in courses. You're going to learn this in our curriculum when you enroll as a student, one step at a time, so you can truly master it. Okay. Just know that we have the courses and all this stuff. You can learn it. So a different dimension is not the same as a timeline shift. And now that we are elevating and Earth is actually splitting more, what you're going to start to see is the actual shift. Some people will be able to shift into a completely different dimension. And you'll be able to experience a completely new dimension, not just a timeline shift. They're not one and the same. So be careful. People are doing the very best that they can. Because, all this education and wisdom has been withheld from us for centuries. So people are doing the best that they can with the knowledge and the information. And a lot of it's not accurate. And a lot of it's just piecemeal. And it makes it challenging. But a lot of times when people talk about, timeline shift, it's not even a timeline shift at all. It's just kind of a general statement that people get real trendy to use. Till then, a lot of people use it and they think they know what a timeline shift is. Guys, just because you raise your vibrational frequency, it doesn't, in a black and white way, energetically mean you're on a new timeline. It gets way more complicated than that. So just be careful take things with a grain of salt. And that isn't to insult anybody sharing this stuff, because it's hard. Everybody's doing the best they can. It isn't easy to teach this stuff to a collective of people that has been withheld this level of wisdom for centuries. So what you say can't even be comprehended or understood by many until you go through the courses and the levels and master each level. Oh, I get what you mean now. Okay. We have to be willing to educate and be educated in that way. All right. So having said that, you need to take things with a grain of salt and don't judge people, for fuck's sake. Quit with the judgment of everyone all the fucking time. All that means is you judge. Very low frequency to judge. Knock it off. You're going to get pulled into an old earth if you keep doing that shit. Quit it. It's going to be harder to get back to new earth. Judgment's got to go. Don't judge people, okay? Yes, there are assholes out there that are plants and they're giving you wrong information on purpose. All spiritual people, yes, that does exist. And there are also people who are just doing the best that they can. And they're sharing whatever level they can share. Don't judge anybody. Quit it. Even the assholes. Don't judge. That means you judge. Quit it. You don't have to. Get on off of an old earth and vibrate higher to a new earth and realize judgment is what weighs you down and holds you back, not the other person. I really want you to get that, because judgment is one of the things that every human being exists in and as, until they're a high enough level of consciousness to no longer have judgment, no matter what they're looking at. Now, most people can't tell any fucking difference between the way of truth and judgment. Why? Because they're filled with judgment. You can't even discern the difference between somebody who speaks truth and then you're judging. No, friend, you're actually the one drowning in judgment. If you can't handle hearing the truth, you're somebody who drowns in judgment. That's a fact. Right? If you're assuming somebody's judging by speaking truth, you're the one drowning in judgment. Oh, you're so judgmental. That's a mirror to you, held up and amplified so you can see that in yourself. Okay? Judgment is one of the nastiest frequencies, and it's one of the most challenging ones to truly see and discern the difference and heal it within oneself. In my observation over all the years that I have been helping people and teaching people. So just get rid of it. Do your best. Okay? As you elevate more, it isn't just a timeline shift that you can experience. You will actually become powerful enough energetically to shift into a completely different dimension. And that is super exciting. And when you're able to shift into a completely different dimension, a lot of the things that you can experience are the things that we typically refer to as, mythical. That's just, mythology. No, it isn't. The majority of what you see in what we love to label as fantasy or mythology or mythical, or even sometimes a generalized use of the term esoteric, a lot of that is simply it's mythical, it's fantasy, it's fake, it's pretend, it's imagination, because you function in a dimension where that stuff is mythical and fake and pretend. It isn't real. It's made up, it's imagination. Does that make sense to you? Let me say it again. When you function on the dimension where that isn't real, then in that dimension, it's mythology. It's not actually real. Because in that created reality, those things aren't real. They're mythical. They're made up in that particular created reality. That is a certain dimension that you function in. When you can actually become elevated enough to shift dimensions and you can enter into a different dimension, all of a sudden in that dimension, the veil's thin because you're in a new dimension. So you'll experience a couple of different things. Humans are not, and I'm generalizing, are not elevated enough yet where they can just pop in and out of a dimension, have a stark, shocking difference. The frequency that you shift into, you wouldn't be able to handle it. It would create psychosis. Physical symptoms would be extreme. Humans aren't elevated enough to just pop into different dimensions. They're just not. Period, end. And if you, no, I can jump dimension. No, you can't. No, you can't. You don't understand what shifting into a new dimension means. You're thinking of a timeline shift, not the same thing. To shift into a completely new dimension, what's really happening is the veil's thin enough where people can, it's like there's a transition phase that I see energetically with a lot of people. They're really elevating, so they start to experience two dimensions overlapping. Another way to say it, the veil's thin between two dimensions. So they still mostly live on the dimension that they're used to, and then they experience some of the new mythical, mystical magic of another dimension that they now have access to because they're elevated enough to experience those things on a new dimension. A dimension where mythical beings, mythical beasts, for example, certain types of superhuman abilities and powers very easily and simply just exist on that, in that dimension. It isn't abnormal. Dragons always existed. There they are. They're flying around. Dragon's a dragon's a dragon. It's no different than saying, ooh, I went to this part of the country or the state, depending on where you live in the world, and I saw lions. Of course you see lions. Lions exist in this dimension, don't they? Well, when you shift into new dimensions and you're able to actually see and experience a new dimension, then you see the mythical creatures, what we call mythical. They're just beings like you and I are. Fairies are fairies and you can see them now because you're in a new dimension where you can simply see them now. Do you understand? They're not pretend, fake, imaginary, mythical, mystical, blah, blah, blah. That's on a lower dimension where if we saw those things, we'd fucking kill them. We destroy them because that's what patriarchy does. So that disgustingly low existence and low dimension, which is the patriarchy, that murders and destroys and conquers and all that nonsense, that level of violence, of course those beings, you can't see them because we tried to make them all extinct and kill them all and dissect them and all this psycho shit, the violent crap that we do. When you're a higher being, you would never in your life, you are the vibrational frequency of harmlessness and gentleness. You are the vibrational frequency of the way of honoring, the way of unconditional love. You would never harm another being. Never. And in the way of honoring, you would honor what that being is. So those of you who are elevating higher and higher, and this is a part of the new earth, you'll start to, the veils will thin and you'll start to experience new dimensions, not just new timelines. That's where you're going to see more, quote unquote, mystical, magical, mythical beings and experiences, which are not, what do you call them now? They're just beings that share the same dimension as you, that live on the planet like you do. Make sense? That is what I want you to understand about a dimensional shift versus a timeline shift. Entering into a new dimension, you're going to see those veils thin more and more, especially the higher you are in your elevation, especially on a new earth, not the old earth. The old earth, that's all imaginary, fake. You're crazy, woo-woo. You know, you all have experienced that. You know what that is. That's the old earth. New earth, the higher you elevate in your frequency and your level of consciousness. Those beings, those creatures, those everything you read about or saw in fantasy movies, all your superhuman powers, you're going to start to see that stuff more and more. It's going to come online because you're able to elevate that high, number one, in the dimension that you're in. You're also going to be able to shift into a different dimension and actually experience those things for real, because that's just how and who exists in that particular dimension. Now that you're not a violent threat, like what old earth taught us to be, when you no longer function in those frequencies, it's very easy for those mystical, magical, mythical creatures to like show themselves to you for real, because you're not going to freak out. You're not going to get scared. You're not going to try to kill it. You understand? And if you still are those frequencies, they're not going to show them. So you can't jump dimensions. You're not ready. You don't have the high enough vibrational frequency to shift a dimension. So you just don't. You can't energetically. Quantum energetics, when you learn how to elevate enough where you can simply, whoop, I'm in that dimension now, you just can go there. Do you think Goddess, the creator, source of all that is, can't go anywhere she wants to and experience literally anything she wants to? She's the one who created all of it. She is all of it, and that's what you are. But in human form, you have to rise high enough to become that version of Goddess incarnated, source incarnated, the creator incarnated in human form. And in human form, you have to become it over time. Okay. And once you do become it over time, you can just shift dimensions. The more powerful you are, the more power that you have, that your physical body can handle, where you won't get sick or go crazy. You can just handle everything spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And because of that, you'll now understand why in our programs, our coursework at our university, at Masters of Self University, that's what we start you with to build you up to be able to do and achieve the things I'm talking about. You start with mental programs, emotional programs, behavioral programs, what happens in your physical body when you function in your traumas versus your enlightened divine self. All of those things that we teach you in our foundational coursework in our classes at MSU is to build you up and prepare you to get to a point where if you want to be a being that is so high that you can shift dimensions, you simply can't. I mean, it's so fun and so exciting. And then watch your reality just shift and change and transform. It's amazing. But you have to be willing to put the work in, the effort to get to that level. You have to become it over time. So if that sounds fun and exciting for you, then go to mastersofselfuniversity.com. Join one of our enrollment meetings that we have for free, just so you can learn about it, and enroll as a student. Because this is what we're here for. We'd love to teach you all of this. We would love for you all to become it. This is the kind of education that you receive on a new earth. Who's ready for it? Thank you for listening. Always such a pleasure. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.